Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our session. We're going to give a couple minutes for folks to join, and then we'll get started in just a minute. I see people are still popping on, so I'm going to give another minute or so before we get started. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started right now. I see a lot of folks are still joining. I'll catch them up with once they start joining. My name is Stephen Chung. I'm the president and the World Trade Center Los Angeles, as well as the chief operating officer for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. We're delighted to be partnering with the United Kingdom Consulate in Los Angeles and with the World Trade Center Los Angeles to be hosting this discussion on setting the stage for green games. As many of you know, we're very proud in Los Angeles that we'll be hosting the 2028 Olympic Games for the third time in Los Angeles. And on top of it, we'll also be competing, and hopefully we'll be getting the World Cup in 2026. Additionally, as many of you know, we have the Super Bowl coming next year, but many folks don't know that there are going to be additional great sessions and great games coming to Los Angeles besides those three major events. This includes the 123rd US Open Championship for golf. WrestleMania is coming to Los Angeles, and of course, Major League Soccer and Major League Baseball All-Star Games, on top of a whole bunch of different NCAA championships that will be happening here in Los Angeles, making Los Angeles the capital for sports entertainment in the United States over the next decade or so. And staging and running a sports event, it's going to naturally mean a large crowd and significant energy consumption, a large amount of trash, waste, and water. And Los Angeles may be the center of sports and universe in the upcoming decades with the games I just talked about. But there's a lot of opportunity for us to reduce waste and increase sustainable practices. And as a global leader and champions of green initiative, both the United Kingdom and Los Angeles have the experience and seek to lead by example through advanced structures and innovative systems that will significantly reduce both waste and carbon footprint from large-scale events. And that's why this conversation today is so relevant and so timely, because we're going to hear from experts from both local and from our partners in the United Kingdom in terms of what are the best practices, what can we do to improve our footprints so that we can get ready for these mega events that will be generating a lot of revenue for the local communities, but at the same time will be also great opportunity for business opportunities, but also for sustainable practice. So we're just so happy that everybody is able to join us today. And to start us off, we're going to introduce and have a couple great speakers. And our first speaker, I'm proud and very, very delighted to introduce Emily Cloak, who is our Consul General at the British Consulate in Los Angeles. Emily Cloak is the British Consul General in Los Angeles, and she's a senior representative of the UK government in Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Hawaii. In this role, she promotes trade and investment, scientific cooperation, tackling climate change, creative and media collaboration, and educational partnership between the UK and the Southwestern United States. She also oversees delivery of essential consular service to 600,000 strong residents, community, and British visitors. Really big job, and we're so delighted to have Emily join us today to provide opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Consul General Cloak.
Stephen, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I am so pleased to be here today at this event on the Green Games to hear from a brilliant lineup of UK and LA speakers on what their organisations are doing to promote sustainability in sports. As Stephen said, this event is part of a UK consulate partnership with WTC LA to highlight the importance and the value of UK LA trade and economic engagement. I'm really pleased that the UK is the second largest investor in California. And I hope you all come away inspired on the speakers, as well as the amazing potential for UK and LA to do even more on cross-border trade and investment in the Green Games. Sustainability and sports are two areas that are close to my heart. Climate change. This is the UK's top international priority. We need to collectively reduce emissions and take global action to keep the temperature under 1.5 degrees. And the UK is doing that in a number of ways. Firstly, we are co-hosting with Italy COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow in November, bringing together global leaders and actors across society to see what action we can take to do that. We're also taking action at home. We were the first major economy to legislate to cut emissions. We have also committed to do that even further, looking to reduce our emissions by nearly 70% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. And we're also looking to do that in a way that promotes growth. And in December, our Prime Minister announced a 10-point plan to really spur an green industrial revolution, seeking to create 250,000 green jobs and accelerating action like zero emission vehicles, investing in green public transport, areas like offshore wind, cycling, walking, and enhancing sustainability and efficiency in buildings. And sports. So sports can be hugely powerful in meeting these goals, moving to net zero, increasing efficiency, as Stephen said. But for me, I think what's unique about sports is that it also has the power to inspire. It has the power to inspire its supporters, stakeholders, viewers, and there are so many opportunities for that coming up. Whether it's the Super Bowl next year in LA, or in the UK, the Commonwealth Games, or the Women's Football Euros, which I'm hugely excited about, whether it's through the tennis. Over the weekend, we saw how hugely inspiring that can be, through top Premier League clubs in the UK, or as Stephen said, more events coming up in the next 7 or 8 years, including the 2028 Olympics. The UK is doing some really ambitious things on sports and sustainability. And for me, as a Spurs supporter, I was extra pleased to see that there will be the world's first net zero game at elite level at Tottenham Hotspurs next week, Game Zero. And there are so many more examples as you'll hear today. So without further ado, I'd like to pass back to Stephen, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the best practices being discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General, and thank you for your partnership. It's been a wonderful experience working with your office, and there's a lot more that we need to do in order to make sure that we have all the information as we're preparing for all these great games. And prior to the pandemic, the Los Angeles region actually led a delegation to the UK to look at the 2012 Olympic Stadium that was built there and their experience. And we learned quite a lot, not only when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to environmental sustainability, but how do you basically continue the legacy of those projects? And so learning from those experiences has been key to our development for our future as well. And we're delighted to have our keynote speaker joining us right now, Barak Kaplanoglu, who was the director of executive offices in Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. And as a director of executive office at Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games, Barak leads the wide range portfolio of sustainability at B 2022. Barak brings experience from London 2012, FIFA World Cup Qatar, and Expo 2020. Programs at various program leadership roles, including program director for HSEQ and Workers' Welfare Assurance at Expo 2020. He's a champion of ethical business and creating legacies for people through the lens of doing good business in every sense, especially in major sporting events. And we're so lucky and we're so happy to have Barak join us from the UK so that we can learn more about his experience. He's going to do a presentation for us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Barak.
Hello, Stephen. Let me just start with the presentation. If you could give me a second, please. Apologies, I'm just having a technical problem. If you could give me a minute. Stephen,
Yes.
I'm terribly sorry. I have actually not been able to locate my, one second,
No worries.
my PowerPoint presentation, which we were just looking at a minute ago. So perhaps I could just start with without the presentation as we could talk about. So in terms of Commonwealth Games, Commonwealth Games is a major investment in the UK. As it was mentioned before, it's a major event that is kind of building on to the legacy of London 2012 and other major events. And if you look at it that way, what we have done is that we have organized a major event with 72 nations attending. It's a multi-sports event. It covers over 1 million, there will be 1 million tickets sold and 1.5 billion TV audiences. So from that perspective, it's really important that we are actually staying relevant and important into the significance of what is going on in the world. So if you take it that way, it's actually a sporting event with a culture around it. And in the world of post-COVID-19 recovery, green recovery, it's extremely important that our UK government has an important agenda called Levelling Up. And maybe some of you might not be aware of this, is that we're looking for green recovery, that the nation kind of recovers together in a more fair, green way. So in terms of our event, one of the key challenges that we have done is that we had to kind of come up from the place of thinking how we're going to actually deliver this event successfully. So our pledge, which if you actually Google, you will be able to see that. And I will share the presentation with you afterwards so you can actually share with the wider audience, is that we have promised to deliver the most sustainable Commonwealth Games yet. And it's really, really important to point that out because actually we're all in this journey. We're all learning from each other. And it's very, very important for us to actually acknowledge that this will be an ongoing process from lessons learned and from an operational perspective. One of the biggest commitments that we had made is being carbon neutral. And this, we will be the first ever carbon neutral games. Another commitment we made is that to be socially responsible and act and deliver in that way. Economic recovery, regional recovery is a big part of it. Those of you who might not know England, Birmingham is the second largest city in the UK, and it's actually a very important economic powerhouse outside of London. And then we also really care about equal access. So there's a number of initiatives that we've taken in Birmingham 2022 to kind of promote that. I think something really, really important to mention, of course, many of you would have read the news, recent news, as well as ongoing debates about carbon and environment. Something really, really important is that we do need to balance when you speak about the ESG agenda, environmental, social governance agenda, we do need to balance in these major events, not only the environmental aspects, but we do also need to seriously think about the social aspects of it. So if I could share with you a number of lessons we have learned. When you're setting up a major program to deliver sustainability, it's really important these days to start from the get-go. You do need to get the commitment from the leadership, set up your strategy and build a team. And it's really, really interesting because a lot of organizations talk about sustainability, but they really struggle and they go for point solutions. In our experiences, the best way to approach that is to take a programmatic approach to include social, economic, as well as environmental aspects. It's very important to get the right resource allocation. And a lot of organizations kind of talk about it, but when it comes down to it, they kind of really struggle to do the right investments. And one of the best ways that we have found in terms of delivering sustainability, you are not alone. There's a really good way you can actually deliver it by having regional and national partnerships. In the case of Birmingham 2022, for example, we got into a sponsorship deal with our local utility water company in terms of delivering it. And then in terms of our carbon neutrality, which then we'll be able to build a forest and be able to offset some of our carbon footprint. The important thing is to take it as a learning opportunity, because I think a lot of organizations make big claims, but they don't really recognize the fact that the best way to get around this and approach it is through what we will call a humble leadership. It's a learning opportunity for everyone. When you talk about different functions in the organizing committee, different parts of the organization, a lot of them are actually really interested in learning with us. It's also important to have the right blend of leadership and expertise. Something that does happen is that in many organizations, sustainability gets kind of given to sustainability professionals and experts. Of course, we need their inputs and expertise, but it's really, really important that the leadership and the management is truly engaged with this. In the UK, we're kind of quite lucky, at least in the organizing committee as well, is that there's huge amounts of engagement. One thing that you really need to think about, you have a number of games coming up, is that we really had to think about when we were setting our strategy, is that there is growing expectations. So what are you planning to do next year or year after, or in a couple of years' time, that is still going to be relevant and impactful? It's very important for your plans to be credible, but as well as future-proof. And then last but not least, it's extremely important to engage your stakeholders. There's a number of stakeholders in a complex environment like this. They are mainly interested in legacy. So we've done a number of things that kind of connecting our agenda with their agenda, which has been really, really helpful. Last but not least, nobody has all the answers. What we need to recognize is that we're creating a roadmap into taking some number of aspirations, which if you, apologies, if you take the PowerPoint, you will see a link to the pledge. And if you Google it, you will see our pledge with 7 pillars that we have, is that you will see it's very easy to make these commitments in one aspect, but it's really, really difficult to deliver them. So what we need to do is that we take it as an opportunity to learn, work together, and be able to be a mission-driven organization. And I think this is the only way that we will be able to be successful. We're in contact with a number of major events, and if anybody in this call would like to follow up and have further conversations, we'll be more than welcome to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barak, and we'll be sure to share your PowerPoint presentation with the rest of the audience member afterwards as well. And I have a lot of great follow-up questions for you in the panel discussion session. With that, I also want to ask the audience to start thinking about your questions that you want to ask Barak, and also the rest of our panelists that will be coming up shortly, and start entering in the Q&A so that we have enough time to address some of your questions. Thank you, Barak, again. Next, we have another great speaker that will be joining us as our keynote speaker, Nelson Ventris, the sustainability specialist from SoFi Stadium. Nelson is responsible for the creation and implementation of SoFi Stadium's sustainability program, including tracking the stadium's waste diversion metrics, water consumption, energy conservation, food donation, and assisting with community events. Prior to working with SoFi Stadium, he worked for the LA Memorial Stadium, Coliseum, Dodger Stadium, LA Galaxy, and CSUN, which is the California State University Northridge Athletics. We're delighted to have Nelson here today, and we're very interested to hear what's happening at SoFi. I've only seen pictures of the stadium. It looks amazing. Can't wait to be there in person. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nelson Ventris.
Everybody, pleasure to be here. Please let me know if you have any difficulties hearing me. I'm using 2 different devices. Before I talk about how we operate the stadium, I wanted to talk about the design of the stadium itself. We only, using a sports reference, we took the football from the design team and the construction team and kind of ran with their leadership. So the stadium itself was designed with sustainability in mind. If you've ever seen pictures of the stadium, or you can see behind me, the whole stadium is covered with an ETFE canopy, which is an ethylene tetrafluoroethylene kind of plastic polymer that covers the entire seating bowl, as well as a 2.5-acre plaza that sits right next to the stadium, and also covers a 6,000-seat YouTube theater that is located right next door to the stadium. The stadium itself had that in mind as a cover for the stadium. And it has it holds about 90% of the strength of glass with only 1% of the weight. And that ETFE has a 60% frit pattern in it that reduces the UV rays so we don't create a greenhouse effect within the seating bowl. There are no walls that surround the stadium itself. It's an open air stadium. So we like to call ourselves the first indoor-outdoor stadium that's ever been built, at least within the United States. But that open air creates a natural cooling of the building. So cold air comes in through the sides of the building, And we actually have 36 panels within that ETFB canopy that can slide open, that pushes the hot air out through those panels and creates a chimney effect. So we can naturally cool the building by only opening 36 panels within the building. That was designed to create at least a 5-degree difference between the indoor and outdoor, or under canopy and outside of canopy. So for a cold day, if we close those panels, we have about 5-degree difference inside, 5 degrees hotter than it is outside of the stadium. And when it's hot, we have it 5 degrees cooler than it is outside of the stadium. Underneath that canopy is also a gutter system. And that gutter system actually leads to a 6-acre lake that we have on our property. So SoFi Stadium sits on a 295-acre property that we call Hollywood Park. And on that property is a lake. And we know that Southern California, and particularly Los Angeles, doesn't have a lot of rainfall throughout the year. So that gutter system helps us with the little bit amount of rain that actually does come, so we can collect it. And that water then flows into the lake. Now, knowing that we don't have much rain and it's a 6-acre lake, it's millions of gallons of water that we'll have, and we are within an area of the country that is prone to drought. So our brilliant designers who built the lake understood that it was important to have a sustainable lake and be able to support the local water infrastructure. So that lake is actually infilled with millions of gallons of reclaimed water from a local water district called West Basin. And they're able to provide us with about 28 million gallons of reclaimed water per year on average, helping us keep the same amount of water available for drinking water for the local Inglewood community. So that's from the design team, that's where they gave us a good standing point. So we kind of took that idea and ran with it. So I've been on the project at the stadium since 2018 and trying to understand how important sustainability will be to the residents of Inglewood. And we decided that we understood that sustainability is a very Mobius word to use. It means something different to everybody. So we tried to take from the 3 main pillars of sustainability. So we didn't only want to be environmentally responsible, but we also wanted to have that social impact. The city of Inglewood has not had a lot of sports around since the Lakers and the Kings moved from the Forum, which is exactly across the street from our stadium, to downtown Los Angeles. So we wanted to give them something that they could be very proud of, and also have a good impact towards their community. We understood that there was a food desert in the community directly across the street from the stadium. So we wanted to focus on food recovery, food donations, and tackling those food deserts and food insecurity within the area. And we also wanted to attack waste. So we understood that a 70,000-seat stadium such as ours can produce a lot of waste. A local study from the state of California found that 2.4 pounds of waste is generally created by fans at sporting events here in California. So that's a few tons of waste that we would be generating. So we wanted to fight that as well. Within our plan, we created a 2-stream system for the stadium. We have a compost collection and recycling collection front of house for all of our fans. So almost everything that a fan will get from our concession stands will be a compostable material or recyclable material. And we have 2 food digesters within the building that will digest all of our pre-consumer food waste that will be turned into a sewer-safe liquid. That liquid will then go into a grease interceptor, and that will go into our sewer. We also have a lot of cooking oil that we will be producing in the building. We actually have that oil and sent to a processor down in San Diego to be turned into biofuel. We have our food donation program with our food and beverage provider. We donate a lot of our prepared food items to a company called Chefs to End Hunger that then gets turned around and sent to different food recovery agencies all over the Southern California region. And we also have an in-house community program that we call Hollywood Park Foundation that also takes prepackaged food items and sends them to local recovery agencies such as US Vets and the Midnight Mission. We also host several community events here on site at the stadium where we invite residents of Inglewood to come visit the stadium, enjoy some of the food products that we offer, but we also invite a lot of the local businesses to sell their wares with us. So on these community days, we actually bring in local communities. We have local businesses come in and sell their products and just trying to boost the economic prosperity within the city of Inglewood. We really take pride in knowing that we are located within a city that is bouncing back. We know that the stadium itself is just one piece of that puzzle. We also, I mentioned, opened up our 6,000 seat YouTube theater, which folds into the same operation as us. And we also know that mega events such as the Super Bowl are coming in and will also be included in the sustainability of the stadium and boosting Inglewood. The Super Bowl itself has 56 community projects related around community greening. So we will be focusing on greening projects within the city of Inglewood as well as throughout the Los Angeles region. We have a major food recovery effort for the Super Bowl as well, for not just the game, but the different event offerings that surround the Super Bowl around Los Angeles, such as the Fan Fest, the tailgates, and those sorts of events. There's also a huge material recovery effort for every single event that the Super Bowl will be hosting as well. So we will be generating a lot of food and a lot of materials that will then be donated all throughout Inglewood and the city of Los Angeles. And with that, I would like to hand it off for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nelson. And it's fantastic to hear not only all the sustainable practice you have at SoFi Stadium, but also what you're able to do with the community. One of the things that we didn't mention, when we talk about these events, we're always talking about how great Los Angeles is. We're the #1 customs district. We have the #1 county economy, but at the same time, we also face a lot of challenges. With COVID-19, we at LA Economic Development Corporation did a report that found that in the first 2 months of the pandemic, the Los Angeles County region lost over 776,000 jobs because of the pandemic. And over the last year, we recovered a portion of it, but we're still over 400,000 jobs short of where we were at in 2020, at the beginning of 2020. So these games, these opportunities really provide additional opportunities for the local communities. And to hear of your Chefs to End Hunger and also your donation to Midnight Mission is going to be very important. I want to thank you for that. And I want to transition us to the next part of our discussion, which is our panel discussion. And I would like to welcome our panel speakers as well. I would like to invite 2 additional speakers to join us. Martha Cecedo, who is the Chief External Affairs Officer for AEG, and she's worked in both the public and private sector developing and implementing large-scale political communications and community engagement strategies. And she's responsible for leading AEG's External Affairs Division, including corporate communications, public and community affairs, government affairs, and its charitable and philanthropic efforts, which provides funding to nonprofit organizations expanding opportunities for children. A big portfolio she has, and we're so delighted that you're able to join us, Martha. And I also want to introduce Julia Paule, who is an expert on sustainability within motorsports. She is the sustainability director at the world's first fully electric single-seater racing series, the ABB FIA Formula E Championship. She certifies the championship net zero, being the first sport in the world to achieve this since inception after having achieved sustainable event certification, making it the first ever motorsports event to achieve this prestigious standard, together with a renewed 3-star level for FIA's environmental management system. So we're delighted to have Julia join us as well. And I would like to bring back Nelson and Barack to join us for our next session, discussion session. So please turn on your camera and excellent. And for the audience member, this is also a great chance for you to start entering your questions into our Q&A session so that we can start asking our great panelists some of your questions as well. I'll start. I have a lot of questions for our audience member, or for our panelists. As our speakers earlier have talked about, sustainability has so many different elements, and we perhaps have the all the answers around what being 100% sustainable mean, and we don't really know what exactly that means yet because there's so many different definitions. But given the strategies organizations here have implemented so far, can you share a few best practices you've uncovered through your work in this area? Perhaps we can start with Martha first.
Sure, I'm sort of going to focus on the big picture. I think in terms of what we've seen, and for those of you that don't know, we're globally headquartered in Los Angeles. We're a large sports and entertainment company. We have a big presence in Europe as well, with a major sports and entertainment district anchored by the O2 in London. We're also a presenter of large music festivals. We have 2 of them in London annually. Thank you, Stephen, for inviting me to be here. In my opinion, I'm going to focus on 3 best practices. One is when a business or a festival or an event establishes clear metrics with key performance indicators, I think that goes far towards helping them achieve success because it's very transparent in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. And then you can sort of focus your efforts on those things. The second thing, which I think one of our speakers mentioned earlier, is the sense of buy-in and accountability. Success requires a number of different stakeholders when it comes to environmental sustainability, right? From the companies that are producing the food and beverage containers to, energy production, et cetera. But also within your own organization. I think sustainability has really evolved from being a nice to have to something that's seen as more critical to the business operations. And so our CEO is absolutely engaged. The accountability piece also is reflected. We do annual reports that are published online, which are really transparent, which lay out what our goals are and what we've been able to achieve. I think that's important. And third is really just that transparency piece, being able to communicate very honestly and openly with people around what you are doing and inviting them into the conversation, because a lot of times, there are some great ideas that come from outside of your organization. So we really try to establish partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. And Julia, same question for you, but I think for our audience here, it would be great to understand more about Formula E. It's such an exciting
Absolutely.
Basically, if you can give a bit of a description.
Of course. So Formula E is kind of like an all-electric racing series. So this is kind of like an international championship. Take it as a sort of circus that travels around the world, but we race electric cars and they are 100% electric. They're also 100% powered by renewable energy. So Formula E was created with a purpose. The point was not to have another kind of like racing series. The world had kind of like plenty of racing series that were exciting enough. But the kind of like the point of Formula E was to help advance electrification on the streets. And my mission is to bring the substance to kind of like the kind of like overarching kind of like a goal and the purpose of the creation of Formula E. So, I mean, if we go down to kind of like best practices, obviously kind of like I can only echo what Martha said. I mean, on a daily basis, and I'm going back to the root and the definition of what sustainability is, you would focus on environmental, social, and then kind of like governance or kind of like the partnership elements. I mean, the first thing on the environment is always kind of like the same. That's about the measurement, because you need to be able to benchmark, first of all, against yourselves and then setting your own targets. So that's extremely important. And again, this is the kind of things that enabled us to achieve net zero carbon kind of like certification, because we had been measuring since the kind of like ignition of the championship. On the social aspect, something very important for us, and again, echoing what other speakers have said in the past, is the engagement with the local community. How do you benefit to your local community? How do you engage? How do you create a dialogue with them? And which kind of legacy, whether they are tangible or intangible, because you can educate people through conferences and so on, do you leave after your event? And last but not least, kind of like the governance side of things, or the partnership side, is very much kind of like how you create a culture for sustainability. I mean, we've achieved that very much through the ISO 20021 certification, the Sustainable Events Standard, where we really kind of like embedded a management system in kind of like the approach of how we are conceiving and designing our events, at kind of like from a central perspective, that are delivered each time kind of like locally in different cultures and different places. And that's really how we ensure kind of like not only kind of like the top level standard in terms of sustainability, but also how we ensure that kind of like our events remain relevant and adapted to the local culture. Last but not least, how we engage with our teams and partners, or racing teams and our partners and sponsors. We call that creating value through values. And that's very much how we harvest all kind of like the sustainability kind of like content and credentials that the championship has, and we kind of like support them either in advancing their own objectives and goals, or kind of like in leading and innovating on some of the aspects. I'm just going to give you a very concrete example. One of the most recent one, we have Heineken as one kind of our partners, and Heineken was very keen to develop a more kind of like a sustainable bar for their event and their displays. So we've been working for 2 years with them jointly to develop kind of like what they call the greener bar, which is 100% recycled. Literally everything is recycled, from kind of like the cups you use, the bench you're sitting on, and so on. And they've launched their official greener bar at a Formula E event back in Berlin. So that was back in August. And this is going to be kind of like, then rolled out throughout the world for them as kind of like the new standard of their bars. That's really how we are kind of like pioneering and championing, the future of what events industry and sports industry can look like.
Thank you, Julia. As you're talking, I'm starting to pick up a trend that, the community partnership and also the public-private partnership is so important to making sure that the sustainable practice is not just done by your organization alone. I want to bring this back to Barak. One of the things that you mentioned earlier really hit me, and I took notes, and I would like to learn more about what you describe as humble leadership. I love that term, and wanted to also, from your experience at various games, what are some of the best practices that you have seen in order for you to be able to have that sustained, sustainability practice?
Thank you, Stephen. I think we had to think quite hard about this whole concept of humble leadership. Just like sustainability, it means different things to different people. And one of the key things is, everybody knows about the fact that there is no planet B, and we're all in this boat together. And it's sometimes really difficult for organizations, even though we all want the same thing, to kind of come together. One of the based on previous events, I would say something that we have done as a best practice here that is even more successful than before is that we really shifted the game into legacy focus. I think it was Julia who was mentioning that when the game is finished, when the games are over, what do you do next? And believe it or not, it's quite interesting that we did have a sustainability working group with our partnership. By the way, we are not alone in this. So we're in for those of you who know Birmingham, we're in with the council city. We also have the Transport Authority that we are also working very closely, and the combined authority with a number of councils. And it's really interesting that everybody wanted to do the right thing, but it was really difficult to see the wood through the trees, if you know what I mean. So it was very, very interesting to bring every party together, and we kind of re-energized and recharged the stakeholder working group. We actually got a co-lead, and Julia and others will know that because if you're doing events from different locations, you are actually the only organization that is not sustainable. You have an end date. You will move on to the next one. But what's really important is that for you to connect with everybody in the community. So what we have done is we actually have asked one of our partners to co-lead our group, because then it becomes their ownership as well as us. And that was, I think, something that Martha said about accountability. It's extremely important that it's not just something that we do to the region, to the city for the games that goes on. It's something we collectively do. It takes a lot of hard work. It's about building trust. One of the key things, going back to Martha's point about KPIs and transparency, we have become very, very open and honest with them about our challenges, our KPIs, and what we're trying to achieve. Once we've done that, we realized that there is a number of connections that we could make collectively. We even mapped it out, how our objectives align with theirs, and what are the number of key things that we all want to be known for. Because all of you who've been in big games, in big events, will all remember them for a number of reasons. You can't be, you really need to pick what you're going to shine on. It's the same for LA as well. You really need to think about what is the next thing, the baton you're going to pass on, what is the one or two things that you will do really, really well so that you can be proud of. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I have more follow-up questions with that. But I'm going to jump to Nelson for a bit as well and ask him about his thoughts and best practices, which you've already laid out in your presentation earlier. But Nelson, as you're look, SoFi Stadium is our newest stadium here in the Los Angeles region. And in order for us to get to this point, and for those international audience who are not familiar, in order for us to build project in Los Angeles and California, we have to go through this environmental impact report, which is very stringent and has to go through multiple layers. So there's a lot of consideration for sustainability already. I guess what would be great is that having that gold standard already to pass the test in order for you to build a stadium. What are the cream of the crop, the best of the best practice that you want to share with the audience in terms of things that they should know about?
Hit on a subject that I didn't have much participation in, to be completely honest. So I came in as a part of the operations team, just kind of sitting in the room with a lot of the designers and listening to their expertise. However, from the operations side, we did take a lot of notes from other stadiums around the country, more particularly our counterparts in Seattle, Minneapolis, and Atlanta, kind of understanding behaviors and different trends that were going on within our industry as football stadiums, as well as sustainably ran football stadiums. So really understanding our fan behavior and getting our waste management down was a key for us. So that's why we chose the two-stream system, going with trying to make the end use of the products that the fans will be interacting with an easier process. So here in Southern California, a lot of our guests understand what recycling is. Not everybody understands composting yet. So on our bins, we put aluminum and plastic for our recycling, and then food and food-related items for our compost, just so our fans can understand that the proper behavior is food, and our food boats go into the green bin, and all recyclable products go into the blue bin. We also work very closely with our community engagement team. Community has been a big part of not just our project, but everybody on this panel. So our community engagement team speaks to a lot of these organizations throughout Inglewood, really trying to boost up the prosperity there. So we have several organizations that we talk to. We speak to our local government, the city of Inglewood. I speak to our chief sustainability officer for LA County, because Inglewood is not a part of LA City, but it is a part of the county. So we speak with the county and we talk to them on the local guidelines. We also work, I've been talking closely with the EPA local region to discuss local laws regarding organic composting for the next year or so, and trying to have those conversations with our food and beverage provider to create more compostable products, so it's easier for us to actually divert our waste and send it to the proper facility. And then working with our partnerships team as well to develop those partnerships that we currently have, and to have them create offerings and products to us that we can then turn around and send to those facilities. Such as Ball Corporation, who has a partnership with our stadium, as well as with Cronky Sports and Entertainment, which is our parent company. So they provide us with aluminum cups and are helping us create educational programming for City of Inglewood schools.
Great, thank you, Nelson. And your recycling program and composting programs can be so important. I was just reading in the news today that we have a national paper shortage because of the pandemic, and also because of the increase in online shopping. So anything we can do to divert the waste and to be able to recycle our paper product will help us a lot. I want to move back to Martha, actually. Martha, AG is a global operator of sports and music events. I know that you and I have previously gone to Berlin because you guys are operating the Mercedes Platz, and I know you guys have operation over in UK and Asia as well. In your work around the world, how do you see the global uptake for sustainability, and are there any specific interesting projects that AG is working on right now that we should be keeping an eye out on?
Yeah, I think increasingly sustainability is more of a business imperative. I feel Europe has been a little ahead of the US in many ways. And so a lot of times there's collaboration between our US team and our European team in terms of what they've already implemented. I'll highlight maybe just a couple things. Staples Center, so this is already in place, and there's an important tie, I think, that sustainability, I think now there's an understanding that it can also be good for your bottom line as a business. Staples Center uses a lot of energy, water, we were approached by a company called Blue Eco, who had developed a system to essentially take the humidity in the air and transform it into a water source, essentially. It was good for us because it basically creates a better environment for the ice. And so the players have a better skating experience when the hockey team is on the ice. But the environmental plus is that it's actually capturing a substantial amount of water for us. And we're actually using that water. So it became, in essence, a sustainability effort as well. I think that companies are increasingly dedicating teams to innovation in these areas to sort of capture both parts of the positive benefits of sustainability, both on the bottom line for the business and on the footprint that you're creating in the world and in the environment. So I'll maybe share just another example, the O2 in London, which is for those in Los Angeles, it's essentially like Staples Center and the entertainment district under a beautiful dome. They've committed to less than 1% waste being diverted to a landfill. And so again, it goes back to, having goals. I also think, just my last point is that there's a lot of really fun, interesting ways that you can incorporate sustainability. We have a music festival, and for every artist that performs, we are actually planting a tree. And there's just really some, I think, interesting and fun ways to incorporate it into the work that you're doing. So those are a couple of examples on my end.
I love that, Martha. And this actually leads very nicely into my next question for Julia. Wanted to as you're talking about Formula E, it's so creative, and wanted to know what kind of marketing incentives or tactics that are used, to get buy-in from the attendees at the games. As Martha was talking about, to have each performer plant a tree, and Nelson was talking about how do you basically change the behavior of your attendees to make sure that they know the compost versus recyclable. What other incentives have you seen that are useful for us to consider here?
So we're basically very much trying to on events, and again, it's been a long time that we didn't have events that were hosting full public with COVID. But when we have public on site, the idea is to give them a sort of an insider's view into a sustainability lifestyle, but very much using again the tone of Formula E, where basically sustainable lifestyle are going to be the coolest thing. That's really very much what we're trying to showcase. So it's going to vegetarian options in all the menus. Of course, no plastic cutlery, no plastic cups, to recycled branding that they can see in our fan zone. They interact with the local community. We always try and display local charity or local schools or local universities that they can interact with. And that's very much obviously beyond the race itself, that is a testimony of what sustainable mobility is and can be tomorrow, themselves driving an electric car. And of course, we are showcasing the cars that can be purchased tomorrow in the shops that they want. Again, the message is very much to try and showcase that sustainable lifestyles are the coolest thing, because we've done market research. We know our fans are young. They are actually the Gen Z, and the Gen Z in order to decide where to allocate their precious attention, it will have to have some sustainability components. If not, they're not interested in really following a sport or any type of entertainment. So the beauty of Formula E is that we've been really created with a purpose. So it's really trying to to showcase to them the authenticity and the touch points of them coming over and having fun at our events.
That's great. That's great. This also ties into what Martha was also saying earlier, is that it sounds like sustainability, when it comes to the organizer, this is also financially beneficial, could be financially beneficial. So perhaps I can bring it back to Barak and ask you to kind of share with us, from your various experience with various games, how do organizations kind of weigh out the cost benefit analysis when tying together kind of carbon and waste friendly events? Is it cost prohibitive for them to introduce new kind of policies and sustainable practices, or is it actually financially beneficial for them?
So I think it's a bit of both. This kind of reminds me that long time ago, many years ago, I was having a conversation. This was actually related to health and safety, but if you think about the existential threat we have, it's not that different. Somebody said to me, some people do it because they see the light. Other people do it because they feel the heat. So it's quite interesting. So, and you need a bit of both in the business dynamics. So I think it was Martha who was mentioning the fact that it's a business imperative these days. So, and I think Nelson and Julia made some really good points about that. Major events these days, it's no more an option not to do this. Let's be honest about it. We're all in the same boat. We're all progressing collectively. Being responsible is a fundamental element of our reputation as games. And we do need to say, whether it's social, it's all the great stuff Nelson was talking about in terms of, food supply, whether it's environmental things, Julia was talking about engaging the spectators and other people in terms of attracting kind of lifestyles. We are all have to be able to associate with that. So I think, if I'm not wrong, Julia, you mentioned something I took a note, creating value through values. The moment you shift the conversation from a cost to a values conversation, you have incredible buy-in across the organization. And it's very important to do that. However, let's be practical and pragmatic. When we are looking at solutions, I'm sure Nelson was in the thick of it many times. You need to think about cost. You need to think about space. You need to think about technology, reliability, the benefits, in terms of the communication. It is actually not easy to implement these changes within organizations. The moment you have let's say a coalition of people who kind of believe in those values, life becomes a lot easier.
I just want to react to what Burak said. I mean, this is actually why it's very important to create a culture for sustainability that is kind of actually kind of like really creating almost kind of like the fertile terrain built by the management system, because the management system will give you the resilience to adapt and kind of like embed these sustainability measures, also dealing with the dilemma of the cost versus benefit analysis, because of course, if it costs twice more, the organization is not going to do it, because it's kind of like, it's no point, it makes no business sense.
Got it. And it's great to hear that this is already expected. You know, every game is expected to deliver on this. Nelson, want to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. Burak hit it right on the head. Having these conversations about cost and value. I mentioned our food digesters earlier during my keynote speaking. So yeah, we had a lot of discussions about what is the benefit to having these food digesters. Will it work for us financially, but also will it work for us from a waste generation standpoint? We really understood that getting rid of this food, is pre-consumer food waste, helps us considerably, not only in just diverting waste from landfill, but it reduces the amount of waste that ends up in our compactors. So we're spending less money on haul. So it was a very easy conversation for us to have and say that, yes, these machines may cost us money now, but in the long run, we'll be saving money. It happens a lot right now as well when it comes to sustainable packaging. So we're having conversations with our food and beverage provider over what is the cost benefit to changing over a plastic cup to an aluminum cup. Is it more expensive in the front end? Yes, but we're receiving a credit at the end of recycling them and getting some of that money back from us thanks to our California value for aluminum products. So we're able to find those the solutions that most people would think is cost prohibitive is actually more cost beneficial.
So I think both Nelson and Julia mentioned this as well, and actually all the panelists already talked about this. It's a community partnership, and some of you have been talking about, you know, giving opportunities to, especially to small businesses, to local businesses. At the same time, do you find that there might be some challenges when it comes to sustainable suppliers are able to provide the recyclable products in terms of being able to deliver at the scale that you need, because you guys are operating mega events. So what are the challenges? How do you overcome that when the suppliers are maybe small scale and they're not able to scale at a very large level? Would love to get your thoughts if this is open to anybody. So please jump in.
I'm happy to start. So for us, indeed, because we deliver between 12 and 16 races in less than 6 months every year in different countries, of course, from Americas to Asia and so on. So the supplier the supplier point is very much of a headache sometimes. It's very much about educating, first of all, the departments that do interact with these suppliers so that they are trained on sustainability and they can give them these kind of guidances. And then for the recurring suppliers or the major suppliers, because you have to pick your battles, you start working on a collaboration, a roadmap, because we know we are coming back in these cities the next year, and we are actually setting very clear KPIs on sustainability. First of all, we work all together as a collaboration, and then the KPI transforms as a sort of financial either incentive or penalty if that's not working. So that's very much how we've approached it.
Thank you, Julia. Anybody else?
I'll jump in. I think what we've seen is actually a substantial increase in the amount of vendors, both large and small, that are creating sustainable products. So that's been extremely beneficial. I think that with regard to small businesses in particular, the scaling issue is always an issue, whether it's sustainable products or anything else. I mean, we've encountered that. There's some, innovative things that folks are doing, I think. So I'll give us as an example. We're looking at creating an expansion to the Los Angeles Convention Center, which wouldn't happen for several years, but we're looking at the population of small and minority businesses that exist today and what resources can you provide today so that in 4 years, they would have greater capacity to be a part of that project. So I think there's some really great things about that. I think also from the technology side, there are a large number of individuals, entrepreneurs, who are looking at how to leverage technology to benefit sustainability. Sometimes that technology may have a larger price tag, but I think for a company like us, someone mentioned the long-term value, you capitalize that out at the end of the day, the costs really become nominal. So I think those are all really good trends for the future.
Stephen, if I could add on to what Marta was saying, I think totally agree about the long-term value, and it's quite interesting when you're actually doing games after games, and as Julia was saying, if you're doing in such a short period of so many events. But one of the key things I think in terms of moving forward is that the solutions, I think in many cases, is in the supply chain. And whether it's very surprising, actually, whether it's a very small organization, as the example that was given before, whether it's a very large organization, if you're willing to listen to your supply chain, they actually have the solutions. And it's very, very interesting. It can be quite time consuming because many of you, I'm sure, with your titles have been approached by a number of suppliers who actually want to do the right thing, and it's a great thing. But it's important for you to kind of realize that it's almost like in the UK, we have Dragon's Den. It's times you really need to think about, it's a TV show about, I guess in the US, you might be having the same, it's a TV show where people come and pitch about their solutions, and you really need to consider, like I said, reliability, operational issues, cost issues, whether you do want to take these forward. A large organization which actually has multiple venues is a perfect opportunity. But one thing that we all share many times when we do innovative solutions, we do have, unfortunately, the first mover disadvantage. So therefore, we do need to recognize that. And one of the key things is that because of that, we need to kind of shift the conversation to values and shift the conversation to legacy. Otherwise, as you said, if you just purely look at short-term business incentive, I don't think we'll be talking about a lot of what we're talking about today. But we know it's the right thing to do.
Excellent. Well, we are at time now, and we have I still have a lot more questions, but I think we're going to have to extend this to another conversation in the future. And I think from the conversation that we had, both from the presentation and the discussion, is that the themes I at least caught is that this is sustainability, and the environmental practices are expected from all the games in the future. And this is going to be cost when it comes to cost benefit analysis, it's a long-term value proposition that's going to be important for everybody to look at. And the only way for us to be able to proceed with this is the community partnership. It's a partnership with the various vendors and your local community, so that you can leave a long-lasting impact, not only for the local community, but the legacy for the entire region. With that said, I want to thank our speaker with Barack, Martha, Julia, and Nelson for sharing their expertise with us, because we have a lot to think about as we're getting ready for the next game. And I also want to thank our partners at the UK Consulate, Consul General Emily Cloak, and also her entire team that's been fantastic to work with to start this conversation. We're at 9 o'clock, so we're going to have one very quick lightning round of question. For each one of you, this is my surprise question that I like to end with. What is the game that you're going to be most excited to attend in the upcoming months and years? For me, I'll just say anything in the AG's putting together or at the SoFi Stadium, but also I'm very excited about the US Open Championship for golf here in Los Angeles coming up in the next few years. I will point to Martha. What are you excited about?
The Olympics being back in Los Angeles. I was in elementary school in '84, and I have a lot of fond memories. I didn't go to the games, but I love that they were in Los Angeles. It's great for our city.
Very, very excited about that. Julia?
Okay, I'm going to play it very, very national. I'm excited about the Olympic Games in Paris that are coming in 2024.
We're excited to see it as well. Barack?
I guess it's kind of the obvious, but next July we have our opening ceremony. So I actually really look forward to seeing 72 nations, kind of a full spectator event. We'll be bringing people together in a multi-sport event hopefully in a better, brighter world. That will be quite a nice feeling, I think, for many of us who've been through quite a challenging time in the industry.
We were hoping to travel there to visit you there at that point as well. And Nelson?
Too. The Super Bowl in February. I'm very excited to be a part of that and have the biggest game in the United States be hosted here at the stadium. But also selfishly, as a huge baseball fan and huge Dodger fan, I'm excited for the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium next year.
Excellent, excellent. And Consul General Cloak, what are you excited about?
So definitely the Super Bowl coming up, because as a relative newcomer to LA, I've not seen one of those yet live. But then longer term, 2028, the Olympics, having been in London for 2012, and as a Londoner, it is so exciting to have the games in your home city. So that will be amazing, I know, as well.
Great. Well, a lot of great events coming up. Looking forward to welcoming everybody to Los Angeles in person. Hope to see you guys here soon. Thank you so much to all our participants and our panelists and our speakers. Have a fantastic day, and we will see you in Los Angeles or in the UK or in Paris soon. Take care.